we're able to originate in 7 different languages, and then we can adapt work into about 30 languages. So we've got incredible capacity because of that vast national range. But for us, it's like an opportunity. It's a diversity thing for us as well, and we're talking a lot at the moment. In fact, you can find some talks online about us and diversity and the power and importance of diversity. We think it's really important to creativity and leads to really interesting creative results. And we're in love with Amsterdam. We think it's the kind of heart of Europe. It's practically the heart of Europe. It's very easy to get around from here. It's also, for a lot of us, somebody like myself who you may have detected has a very English accent. It escapes from the UK kind of dominance in kind of advertising terms. So it feels a lot fresher here. And so for us, it's been a really great way to kind of think about a more European and obviously a more international take for us as a diverse workforce. So that's us. And then just a little bit philosophically about us. We have this kind of mantra internally, which is this concept of born modern. So I said we're 10 years old, 3.5 years old in this office. The agency was born at a time when it was, the industry was really turning on its head. There was a big recession at that point, global recession. So things were changing, and obviously then technology moved at pace in that period. So creating an agency at that time meant that you were dealing with things, there were no standards, I guess, at that time. So people were learning to do things differently. There were obviously very traditional agencies around, and there were digital agencies around, and we found ourselves something like neither of those things. We found ourselves somewhere in the middle of those things. And it was such a changing period that for us, the idea and concept of change is something that's totally embedded in our culture. And something in this brief, and something about how we work with Google, and something about the opportunities for all this stuff, change and being comfortable with the concept of change and comfortable with some of the concepts of something new. Starting from zero, starting from scratch is, I think, really important to cracking this thing and to the way that we try and crack work. So this idea of born modern is like, constantly, the constant rebirth, I guess, of modernity, so constant change. Then just in terms of like how we work, style of working, high tempo, I guess to us, and this is something that we learned from working with a brand like Google, is that Google is a brand that's constantly evolving, its product is constantly changing. And consequently, we find, so is the work that we're doing, and it moves literally hour to hour the way that we work with those guys. So you have to be far more nimble in terms of how you think about ideas, and more adaptive, and understand that things will keep changing. So being much more fluid, or perhaps more iterative. So we develop things quickly. We can turn creative work around in 1-2 days, and keep working on that with our clients. So it's there's a much higher speed of working. That doesn't mean that everything has to be finished and polished, but we like this concept of like high speed in the way that we do things. And that working with clients thing leads on to collaboration. So we work super closely with all our clients. We don't like the big reveal. We don't like disappearing for ages to share with people at the end of a process. So we share along the way, and we also share with partners. So we're not, we like working with other people. I think one of the things that reason this is exciting to us is that we kind of feel that we're going to learn from you guys on this thing, because where we're at in terms of what the opportunities are with this brief in programmatic advertising or dynamic advertising, is that I don't think anyone's come up with the master solution, and maybe they never will because it'll keep changing. But I guess we're all on a level in that sense, so there's opportunity to learn. So it's collaborating with you guys as much as the agencies, the other agencies and the clients. And this thing about cultural impact, for us, everything that we do has to have some level of cultural impact. I know a lot of brands talk about that, but I think if you look at the work, and if you look at the work we've got there, the work we did with Jay-Z for Samsung, we transformed the way that the music industry works in America working on that brief, because the way that on this brief, basically Samsung released Jay-Z's album first exclusively to Samsung's customers. So fairly simple conceptual idea, but it got him to #1 in the Billboard charts. So it was a wonderful incentive for him to get his album out to a load of people and change the way that they worked. For the customers, obviously they got a free album, which was great. And for Samsung, it created a much deeper relationship with the customers. So it's an incredibly impactful thing on culture, but also kind of mutually beneficial. This work you might have seen, I'm not going to talk through all the work, but this work for Benetton, it's not we don't start out every time to get sued by the Pope, but that's what happened in this case, or they were almost sued by the Pope. So, you know you're having a degree of high cultural impact when you kind of create those kind of waves. And that's not for every brand, that's very clearly what Benetton as a brand was sort of set out to do, and they like to challenge the status quo in that respect. But to have that level of impact is really, really exciting. So I would encourage you all to reach for those same stars in that respect. Then finally, just a little bit about ways of working. As you look around, there's some stuff taken down, there's some stuff that's covered with bits of paper. Sorry, it's just one of those things about, it's sensitive, it's stuff that's still in progress. So that's why it's covered up. But all of these walls are working walls. So we use walls constantly to share our work. And again, I'm certainly not going to tell you how to work, but for us, and for me coming to work in this place, I understood the power and value of something as simple as working from a wall. So, putting stuff up, getting creative people to share their ideas early, which is a difficult thing to do, right? Sharing your ideas is a very nerve-wracking thing. You're putting yourself out there for people's critique. If you do it early, it's actually far easier, because I guess it's something that can be built upon, and it doesn't feel like you've had to defend it and protect it over a long period of time. So it works in terms of getting work up. And then the other thing that's wonderful is that you create collaborative teams around work. So you can get creative technologists like Gabor working with strategists like myself, or with the creative working on a brief, and you get people tackling a problem from different angles. So where you can, try not to work too individually. I would suggest, the wall for us is an articulation of collaboration. So find ways to share your stuff early with people to get feedback and develop it faster. Because I think for us, we are very, very pro and positive about the concept and value of collaboration and good creativity. And then prototyping is a thing that's super important to, it's something that's a greater opportunity perhaps than ever. It's for us really important to test effects of how things might work. And the opportunity is great. Technology tools allow us a greater opportunity in being able to test our concepts. So we prototype almost everything. We prototype things in a technology sense. So we test all of our banners, for example. We can prototype all of those. We prototype mobile experiences, so you can do fast build mobile experiences, even from things like Keynote off of a mobile phone. A ways to test an experience from there. Obviously websites, but then not even digital stuff or technologically driven stuff. We concept film, so we do test films for a lot of the stuff that we do. For design work, we do shoots, so we do test shoots for stuff to see how it's going to work. So we prototype so much of the work that we do now, which requires some effort, but it's wonderful because it gets you sort of like 30–40% there in terms of the development. And back to that point about high speed, sort of high tempo stuff, it enables you to sort of develop at pace from that point onwards. And obviously for clients, it's much easier for them to understand where we're going with ideas. So that's a big part of the way we work. So finally from me, I'm just going to talk about some important aspects directing on towards the brief about programmatic. And what I would sort of catch this with is that we're very enthusiastic people. And this point about Born Modern, we're not wedged or lodged to any particular creative solution. We like the opportunity to explore creative ideas in any format. Consequently, here you find creative people, in fact anyone working on a brief, is excited about concepting 140-character tweets or a Snapchat idea as much as they're crafting the concept of a film. So for us, there's huge excitement in doing this stuff in this agency, and hopefully you'll see that enthusiasm. We're a bit involved in the judging as well, so you'll see that we're super interested in where this stuff goes. So it's I would say, this is as exciting as any creative work that you can do right now, because it just feels right on the edge of possibility. And it doesn't feel to me like anyone's really cracked the opportunity here entirely, and I certainly don't think that we've done that. Although, we're having the opportunity, particularly with Google, to experiment. So 3 things for us that are really important. So storytelling, a lot of people talk about storytelling. It's very important to us in terms of how we use technology. So we are not, I think it's safe to say, we're not a cutting-edge innovative agency. That's not what we're aspiring to be. We're people that like to take innovation and apply it at scale. because we kind of think that it's not about doing something to a kind of niche, tiny audience that sort of, just for experimentation purposes to make us look cool. For us, it's to make, as I said already, sort of culturally impactful stuff. So storytelling is a big part of that thing for us. It's ability to kind of tell stories, whatever your medium. And to that point before, it's clear in how you might be able to do that with film as a very, sort of interactive piece of communication. But when you're writing short tweets or a Facebook post, or when you start to look at banners and things like that, you have to equally think about storytelling. Thinking about consumer experience and where they've come from and how they arrived on that piece of communication, and how much of a story you can communicate at that point, what level of depth, and where they go next in that story. So thinking about storytelling as something that can move and wave between different channels and a different part of somebody's day and a different part of their life experience depending on who they are. So the opportunity in programmatic for us in that is that you can have direct connection. So you can start a story with somebody and then involve them back in that story. So they start to move and start to either click on things to go somewhere else or move to another site, and you can follow their journey and progress on that site. You're starting to develop a storyline with those people. So it's an interesting creative proposition in terms of where you go next. Less transactional, I guess the point for us on that is storytelling as an opportunity. So a lot of traditional banner work, I think, is always talked, and it's still important, about having a call to action. But for us, be creative with the call to action. Don't think just about A to B transactional stuff, get them to this point. Think about the creative opportunities of somebody moving on through a story, continuing through a story. So it might take someone else as a call to action on the communication, but that doesn't mean to buy something necessarily. It might be a deeper, richer experience in different directions. And then this idea of sequential messaging. So it's kind of what I'm talking about, this whole thing really. So it's the idea of depth of storytelling. You get deeper and deeper and deeper into a story the longer it goes. And the opportunity with programmatic stuff and dynamic advertising is that you start to get deeper. You can start to get richer into the story, and we'll talk about that when we talk about kind of how we've approached the brief or how we're thinking about the brief. A point about targeting. So this is an amazing thing. So scale is something that I've talked about it a couple of times already, but everyone creates scale because it's for any brand. That's how your business is impacted. If you can reach people at scale, it's really, really important. The opportunity here with programmatic stuff is that we can talk one-to-one, so we can talk person to person, but we can do it at scale. So it's a phenomenal opportunity that we've never had before. You advertise on TV, you can talk to 1 million, 2 million people, but you can only talk to them as one. So you can't talk, you have to talk to them as a collective. So you can't talk to that single person as individual. So think about that opportunity and how specific that we can be with that message. And then this thing about accurate targeting, retargeting. So we're super confident about the idea that our message reaches somebody. And then this wonderful idea of retargeting, which is that they've moved on and moved somewhere else. And then you get to have the conversation with them in a different place. So the kind of journey, their journey of the day moves on, and then we can move the journey of the story on with those people. And then ultimately this kind of idea of higher impact, which is just really a point about the fact that we can kind of, it's, I guess, the amalgamation of those two factors. You shouldn't love wine when you're doing that, by the way. And then there's just this concept of, so within programmatic, I guess the area that's most important for all of us is the idea of dynamic creative or creativity. There's two parts to that really. The idea of this freedom within a framework. So we have a clear framework, but we can be entirely free in terms of what we serve within that. So, information in terms of lines and headlines, we can obviously change according to temperature and all of these different factors and facets that can change all of the content within that framework. So think about that. There is a constraint there, and creative constraints are a wonderful thing, by the way. But then once you're within that creative constraint, there's loads and loads of opportunities about what we can serve. So think about the real breadth of what we can deliver within that framework. And then the second part of that is this idea of programmatic media buy. And this is a point I guess I wanted to urge you on, which is, and Robbo, when he talks in just a second, is going to talk more about this, but the separation of the industry has been a terrible thing, really, about ultimately where we got to. So the idea of separate media agencies and creative agencies and blah, 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 I think it's very, very difficult, and particularly on the media side, because media is a fundamental component of this whole, the success of good creative and creativity with programmatic. Understanding the media opportunities or the media environment in which you're in is critical to the creative product that you serve. Whereas traditionally, or going back even pre-digital days, it really didn't matter that much. It was always just about the numbers. Here, that's entirely out the window. Context, contextual placement is absolutely critical to this. So the environment in which someone's looking, reading, behaving, wherever it might be, is critical to the message that you can then serve. So I'm just going to urge all of you, and Robert will talk about this a little bit more as well, to embrace media, think about media. And you don't have to be media experts in this, but really consider the media and the medium in the answer to this brief, because I guarantee the judges will be really, really impressed and certainly be looking for that, but deeply impressed by how considerate you are in terms of the correct response in media. So the summary of that, I think programmatic, personalised stories at scale, incredible opportunity like never before. And then just higher impact through greater targeting. So being able to be super, super niche what you say to people, but then get a much greater impact as a result of saying those things. And Robert's going to put that into less ethereal terms, I think.
Hello, everybody. Oh, I can hear myself. And a special shout out to anyone who's tuning in on the live stream this evening. Not to you guys there. So Simon mentioned at the start of his chat there that high tempo is one of the ways in which we approach work here, and I guess within that, when he's now committed to us on the live stream in turning around creative work in 1 to 2 days, within that a little bit of process can help, particularly within programmatic, and I guess we use the term process pretty loosely here, but I'm going to take you through a few slides that show you how we kind of set ourselves up and organise ourselves around a programmatic brief. And that starts with, as Simon just mentioned, a little bit about media, which isn't a word you hear too often bandied around creative agencies, but we feel it's quite an important starting point when we're thinking about programmatic briefs. So I thought I used to work, I have a media background, so I feel that I'm able to reduce media planning and everything media down to 2 images on a slide. But if you rewind in time by 10 years, media planning, or thinking about media, used to be pretty binary. It was either we've produced something, or we've built a piece of creative work. Where does that go? Either it goes on telly, or it goes in a print magazine or a newspaper. Fast forward 10 years to the present day, and there's been lots of really smart, interesting stuff happening with technology. And media planning, or thinking about media, kind of looks a bit more like this. Or this is just one of the millions of possible ways you can think about media these days. This is a cultural calendar that we've put together in conjunction with Google, really, that just highlights some of the moments in culture or moments in time that are relevant at a programmatic level for some of the bits of business we work together on. So from very few choices to loads of choices, which can make things a bit chaotic, but at the same time with a bit of processing. It's lots of fun as well. So I guess 3 things that this technology means for us particularly. The first, we've kind of spoken about tailored messages a bit, but the really important thing I think in how we can tailor our messages is firstly around specific passions. So I've highlighted bird watching as a passion here. I don't know if any of you guys out there are bird watchers, but we have to our right here a colleague of ours, Justin, who is the infamous bird watcher within the agency. But if we so wished, we could use data and digital technology to target Justin with messages about his passion. Obviously, there's like events and things that happen out in the real world and in culture. Recently in the UK, we've gone through a general election. I'll spare you all my political views, but there's lots and lots of stuff that happens in the real world that we can use as data points to shape our messaging around. And then there's particular moments, I guess, in media or communications. So I've tried to steer this, as you can see, quite pointedly towards your particular brief around TUI. And again, there's many, many moments in which you can target, but stuff like on the way back from the airport is now a perfectly feasible moment in the world of communications and technology. And there's a whole load of data points that exist in the world that let us target people on those journeys. Whether it's stuff like geolocation based on their mobile phone, or whether we know that they've just checked back into the country when they've landed. Again, I won't labour the point here, but be sequential in our messaging and storytelling. And to build on, I guess it's something useful to build on what Simon said, was that That doesn't necessarily mean you have to be sequential within digital as well. So obviously there's loads of awesome stuff you can do from telling a story through programmatic banner ads and mobile banner ads, but it'll also, you can start connecting that to other channels as well. So thinking about, if someone's seen your message through broadcast TV or someone's heard something in a radio spot, how can you connect up the next message they hear through digital programmatic? And the last and final point, which I think I've kind of discussed already, really, is this technology allows us to think jointly about creative and media strategy. So both of those things are kind of hitting one another in the face, and particularly at programmatic, there, it's where we start together. And I just thought I'd say, before we go into this process, and to be aware and reflective of your brief, it tends to help, we find, when you're thinking about programmatic, to pick an audience and understand the particular journey that they're going through. So I did do my homework and look through the brief that you guys have, and I could see there's a clear point in there and a clear direction around picking some segments and looking at the customer journey. And I won't go into those two things in detail now, but if you have any questions on defining audience segments or mapping out the journeys that they take, we'll hang around a little bit after and come and I can wax lyrical about those if you like. But it really does help to have an idea of who it is you want to talk to. So rather than try and answer the brief that you guys were given, we thought we'd kind of create our own little hypothetical brief and have a bit of fun, a small bit of fun here. So the example segment or personality, I don't know if you can recognise him yet, but see him looking uncomfortable to the left of me. But this is a photo I took from Instagram, and it's of our dear colleague Simon. And he's our example segment for the evening. And if you can't tell, but he doesn't just like getting dressed up in lycra. He also likes riding bikes as well. This is a beautiful, is this a sunrise or a sunset scene? Sorry, sunrise scene. So we're treating Simon as our kind of segment here. He is, I don't want to describe you, I guess. He's a family man who's passionate about cycling. So I guess we can leave it there. That's enough for now. So imagine that's the guy we want to talk to. And once we've defined that, these are really the three things. I guess if you take anything away that might be useful to you in the work that you're doing here, hopefully these 3 points will be there. So our approach to planning for programmatic pulls together the 3 bits of this Venn diagram here. So we have to think about the media opportunity. So what's the opportunity that exists in media that we can kind of latch onto? We have to think about the personal interests or the passions of the audience we want to talk to. So how we can root the message in something that's relevant or contextual to them. And then we think about the creative opportunity that exists in amongst those 2 things. And I think it's fair to say that we believe our best programmatic work, particularly, well, lots of our work, I guess, kind of sits at the center of all these 3 things. So if we're ticking those 3 boxes, we tend to find it's a win. And I guess the different thing there, or at least the thing that we believe is a little different there to how you might approach a creative brief traditionally, is that bubble at the top that's the media opportunity. So a little bit, just exploring those a little bit, and we won't go into too much detail here, but the sort of things we ask ourselves when we're looking at the media opportunity, particularly when we're working with brands and clients such as Google, is it mobile? We know that that's becoming an ever more important and an effervescent media channel. Does it have scalability? Is it something that kind of works for many people across a period of time? Can we be sequential? Is it multi-channel? And what's the opportunity for stuff like partnerships? Is there something that exists in the world that can help us? Again, when we know, so I've introduced Simon, we know a little bit about him and his personal passion of cycling. So we then start to think about, what things are really relevant to the audience, are they easy to access and talk about? Is there conversation that surrounds them? So are there subjects and passions that other people will talk about through the social web? How can we pull that into our work? And I guess kind of last but by no means least, is it kind of relevant for the brand message? Is it something that the brand can logically associate itself to? And then finally, the creative opportunity. So that's really thinking about what we're trying to show, what we're trying to say, what message we're trying to communicate. Thinking about the narrative arc we might be telling, what's the story we're telling, particularly across a banner or a series of banners. Something, I guess, for any Google people in the room, is it legal approved? That's definitely something that we spend a lot of time on here. And yeah, God bless our BA team. And it really helps to think upfront about production requirements as well. I don't know whether that's going a little bit too far for the parameters of your brief, but it's smart to know that stuff up front. And I guess an idea could be kind of one of these things or many of these things. As I said, the process is quite loose. But by start having a conversation around these 3 points tends to get us to a good starting place. So looking at the media opportunity then, we plucked one out of the air that we thought was sort of relevant, but kind of sort of indirectly relevant to the brief as well. So we took this media moment of researching a short break. So we were like, in the journey of perhaps booking a holiday with a travel company, a big media moment might be doing a bit of research. So thinking about where it is you want to go, thinking about when it is you want to go, who you want to go with, and there's lots of ways in through media around that particular point in your journey. We did a little bit of research around it just to sense check that it was something worth looking at. This is a screen grab taken from Google Trends, which maps the interest of particular stuff over time, and it's pretty clear. Although I have to say my screen grabbing skills weren't brilliant today because the box with the date on has kind of covered up the point I was trying to make. But this is 2014, and the peak in interest around people searching for city breaks happens just at the end of February. So obviously, the tool can't confirm why that is, but you can have a hunch that perhaps it's the start of the year, people are just getting over the Christmas bump, the February paychecks landed and everyone's thinking about, how can I go and make myself feel a little bit better and get over the January blues. And we also, just as we were playing around, went one step further, and it's more of a small tangent really. We also did a search for interest in TUI, so when's TUI, when are people most interested in TUI over time, and it just so happens that people were least interested in TUI when they were most interested in city breaks. So I guess that's the sort of thing that we might notice as a media opportunity, is not something to grasp around or something to riff off and put into the creative brief. This is, I should say, that this is all public data, and we pulled it out earlier today. And before you go putting it into your particular brief, it's worldwide rather than Netherlands data, so it's not perfectly relevant. So that's kind of the media, I guess the media route in researching the city break, and then I've already teed up Simon's passion in cycling. So this was just one thing of a segment, one thing you can latch onto that might be relevant in cycling. And hypothetically speaking, why cycling could be an interesting passion to look at here is because it's kind of European wide, so there's definitely a travel element to it. There's multiple events in spring, summer. There's loads of media and social conversation, not conversion, conversation around it. So there's lots of stuff, lots of routing programmatically around that particular area of interest. And I should say Simon's not the only fan of cycling here. I'm a big fan of cycling, particularly for me. There's like 3 big events you might latch onto here, or 3 things you might want to consider in this passion area. The Giro d'Italia, which is going on right now, the Tour de France, and I thought as we were here, we could contextual reference the Amsterdam gold race. There's lots of stuff happening in the world that you can pull in and get data from. And obviously, in relation to a travel brief, the thing that these 3 things have in common is that there's lots of travel opportunities around them. So people will travel from sort of internally and different countries in Europe to events such as these. So that's kind of it, I guess, just a quick short summary. So we kind of started off by having a think about our media opportunity, and that was researching a short break. We'll then sort of dig down into passions and see if there's anything interesting that we can talk about there. And here we got to cycling enthusiasts. We're not going to go as far as answering the creative opportunity. Hopefully the slides that I've just taken you through kind of tee up a range of the opportunities there might be to riff off and to develop around there. And something we wanted to say, just a final thing to leave you on with regards to the process, and something we try and remind ourselves of as we go through any kind of programmatic brief, is like relentlessly trying to focus on the story, not getting carried away with focusing on the technology. Sometimes because the technology exists, and as great as the technology is, you can run away and let that lead technology, let that lead the work and the story you're trying to tell. Like we always try and root ourselves in the narrative and the message that we want to try and convey, and ultimately what that means for the people we're talking to. I think that's my little section done.
I think we're going to a few times. I shall just quickly do that one. Just occurred to me as Robbo was talking about that stuff, I would say, you're not by any means expected to be experts in terms of like the research side of that thing or anything like that, but that was a very deliberately very quick example because it was just demonstrating how you can have a hypothesis. So, it's like this is an interesting, period of the year or whatever it might be, and then you can validate it really quickly by just using simple tools like Google Trends or something like that. These tools are there for all of us. So be sure that in this agency, strategists are not the only people that do strategy. So creatives get involved, and those opportunities are open to creatives as much as our strategists. So you can do that kind of thing. And then the other thing about target audiences and what have you is like just be comfortable with the idea that you will always have a broad target audience, but within that there could be so many different micro audiences. And I don't think the answer is to come along with 1,000 different target audiences with 1,000 different answers. But by articulating just a few, I think you can then demonstrate the scope of an idea, the levels of an idea, really. How it works as a broad idea for a broad target audience, and then how it delivers against a bunch of really super specific audiences. So I think, don't be overwhelmed by the concept of like thinking about media opportunities and just a tiny bit of background research to things. It's just a really way of validating creative thinking. Super quick stuff on this because I think find your style I would say to you, and some of you I think are already working anyway, so you're probably working in an environment where you have a certain style, perhaps you can use that. But very simply for us, this would be how we structure every single thing we do in this agency. So, and it's fairly basic, but I think fairly solid advice in that I would always start with outlining first the insight, so the core insight of what you're what you're identifying from the brief. From what you gave us as a problem, here is what I think might be a potential solution, which sort of the insight is. And then all the ideas from that. But then summarize the idea, and this is a major skill. Summarizing an idea. Sometimes we do that creatively, so we might do a manifesto, so we might do a short mood piece, that can be film or images and what have you. Sometimes it's as simple as a paragraph. It doesn't really matter how deep that is, but that you can articulate your idea as simply as possible, and it's true for any idea, I guess. But for us, that is one of the critical things to people understanding where you're going, because at that point you've got people and they're excited, and everything from that point onwards that you do really just validates the quality of that idea. So then the next thing is, show the campaign elements and try and do that in storytelling terms as well. Try and think about that narratively, how somebody might experience, how an individual might experience those different elements. So what might come first almost? What articulates the idea in, sometimes for us it's not even the thing that's the biggest scale. Sometimes it's the thing that feels the most interesting, the thing that feels like it might nail the idea in the kind of most creative way. So it doesn't have to be the kind of the biggest part of the thing. But then, show it through all of the channels. And then finally this, and this, we were just talking about this before, it worries me, I don't want to worry, I don't want you to worry, it worries me that you would worry about what a user journey is. But it's a very, very simple concept, really. It's just showing what a consumer experience might be. So it's as simple as assessing what a guy or a girl in the afternoon is doing and what point they might interact for the first time with the communication, where that sends them next, if at all, and where that journey develops from there. So this is another part of narrative, really. It's just really visualizing a narrative. And again, this is something that creatives in our business, because it's a discipline rather than a department, are actively involved in. So, it's a really important part of how we sort of present to our clients. So that would, for us, be the kind of recommendation on these things. I think now, Sana, you're going to just talk a little bit about some what we did for Google.
Hello everyone, I'm not so used to presenting as these two guys here, so it will be a little bit less smooth. I'm going to talk a little bit about a project we're currently doing together with Google France. It's still a secret because it's only launching on the 8th of June, so I only have one slide, and I'm just going to do a whole lot of talking to still keep the secret amongst ourselves. The project brief was basically, how can we get Parisian tacos, and taco are tech aspiring and optimistic, curious people to use the Google app. The Google app in itself is a Google search functionality on your phone, which is completely set up contextual. So you ask a question and it basically gives you the most relevant answers for you, taking into account your location, the weather, etc. So we were asked, how can we inspire people to use that app? So we basically started with all these chapters that Robert was just talking about. It's like, what is the insight? So we went on a research trip and we basically went to Paris and looked for that insight. What is that moment that we have to tap into? And we thought that moment of the magic hour when it stays light longer outside, that's a beautiful moment, but because that has a certain magic about it already. And then we did target audience research. And one of the things about the target audience, the Parisians, is that they stay in their area, their arrondissement, can't pronounce that word. So they basically go to the same places every single time. So we thought the Google app is the perfect way to help people to change their habits. So how do we break that habituality? So we came up with an idea together with Google France that basically creates a web app that's an inspirational layer on top of the Google app that allows people to do different things in their neighborhood, but also beyond their neighborhood. And we thought, because of the passion points that people have, there's everyone likes something else. So we created 4 different weeks with 4 different themes. And the themes are, for example, outdoor sports, but also sunset. And there's 2 more themes, but I'm not going to give everything away, which I'm already doing. So we basically created a web app, and the next thing we did was basically look at that media. What are the media opportunities that we have here? And when is this target audience most receptive to what we have to say about that magic hour outside? So when do people listen best to the message that we have to say about do something else with your night? And we thought, so we'll target basically every day between 4 and 6, because that's when people are finalizing their day at work, and that's when they're starting to think about, what am I going to do? Am I going to go to the gym? Am I going to go cook some dinner? And that's the moment where when we are like, hey, maybe you should do something different with your night because there's extra hours in the day, that's probably when people will be most responsive. So we started off with pre-rolls that have different passion points, that are talking to different passion points. And anytime that somebody's targeted with a passion point pre-roll, we basically target them with a different one the next day. And so that's already set up programmatically. Then we have a paid media campaign, so the banners that are also set up based on those 4 themes. So every week we're basically tapping into a different thematic overarching idea. And we have different messages, and what we're doing is we're testing these messages in social. So we're pushing the messages out in social, we're seeing what generates the most traction, and that informs the messages that we have in paid media. So that's all the way programmatic. And there's a next layer of programmatic, which is that it's responding to the weather, because we're obviously tapping into that magic hour, so what if it rains? And it's not going to do a whole lot when you say go out and play pétanque because it's sunny outside. So we have indoor board games, which we launch every time that it's raining outside. So we basically play into the exact moment and the environment. So people get bannering and messaging between 4 and 6 when they're most receptive. They get a banner or a pre-roll that's basically adjusted to the weather outside, and then we change the messaging. So we don't tell the same story. So if this person basically doesn't pick up games, outdoor games, then they might be interested in sunset. So that's how we basically roll the whole programmatic on. And then the last programmatic aspect is the web app itself, which every activity has a certain amount of time connected to it. So a game of pétanque is a different time than doing a sunset tour, so a walk through Paris. So based on the time of day that you enter this website, you will get different activities offered that basically are adjustable to the time that you still have in that day until the sun sets. And then the last one is that when one banner, so paid media, gets most traction, and that content will also surface to the top in the web app. So that will basically get priority because it's likely that it will generate most traction. So it's basically programmatic from A to Z in this campaign. So I think that's it. Did I forget anything? No? Good moment to lose the screen.
Yeah.
Okay. Then during the campaign, we obviously have a chance to do optimization of the campaign, and Gabor's going to tell a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Sam. Oh, hello. Yeah, so that's one of the very interesting aspects of using programmatic is that because there's so much sort of technology involved and there's so much data being generated and there's a complexity in the campaign, it gives us an opportunity to use the data, use the results of how these individual assets and individual pieces of communication perform throughout the campaign to feedback to this to how the campaign works itself. So we call it continuous optimization. So you instead of building a campaign, put a big stamp on it and say this is the campaign, let's ship it and let's see how it performs. We can we create a campaign and all this set of considerations, what you want to measure in it and what you want to optimize while the campaign is running. So the campaign is running, generates data real time, it feds back to the system or to us basically, and we can fine-tune both the creative that we want to push forward, and we can fine-tune how those are used in the programmatic setup, which one is delivered to who, when, how, all that. This requires a different sort of approach from a creative agency because you have to be there while the campaign is running and still developing the creative idea real time. We call it newsrooms because it sounds cool. Sort of. And it also needs this thing that we talked about already, and we will, is to break down the silos because that data is with the media agency, and the client has to be on board to sign off the changes and sign up the optimization. So it's if these three actors of the campaign cooperating very closely, that's when this thing is happening. R&D. So because programmatic is very much happening now and it's changing, it requires this different sort of approach. It's we say we don't nothing. When you figure out a campaign, you basically set up assumptions and you're testing them throughout the campaign and you learn from it, and then that's when the campaign is being made actually in real time. And the other way to interpret this we know nothing is that because the technology changes, because the consumption is changing, the way people see these ads are changing, the media landscape is changing. We are, as an agency, experimenting with these opportunities and seeing how they work out, and we're figuring out the process on the go because it's so new for us as well, and we evolve with the tech and the tools in the audience and the future. Of course. Let's pause here. So we have a couple of questions around this thing. There's a very interesting sort of conversation around this whole sort of data and algorithms in creativity that basically, states something like, oh, the way data and technology and computers interacting with the creative scene and the creative process is terrible because it's going to take over, and we don't have to create creative ideas anymore because we just push a button on a big machine and it's just gonna I don't know. I don't want to use bad words, but it just outputs some sort of advertising. And the way we see it, and I think it's probably the better way to say it, is that all these technologies and all the data that's involved and all the algorithms are opportunities to use creatively, because those creative stories that we create, those are the ones that actually going to relate to people, and that's what people relate to, not the actual smart technology behind them. And using those technologies is important, and it's going to be more and more important, but we have to understand it instead of setting up some fear mongering around them. Yeah, I mentioned this already about technology and the tools are evolving. So we're seeing how our partners who giving us the opportunity to use programmatic campaigns or build programmatic campaigns are changing their tools and changing the opportunities that we can use. How location targeting is getting more and more accurate. It's interesting, for example, how we can track one specific user in this whole story. That's evolving. It's definitely going to evolve further. And as I said, data and behavior, data about behavior is all across in this whole big system, and it's all stored in different points, different actors of the whole programmatic landscape. Things need to converge and things are converging, and that's what creates more and more opportunities to create smarter and smarter and more personalized campaigns. So we see that we're getting into the more connected data world slowly. Yeah, watch out. Because we have a lot of data by users, it gives us the opportunity to be very creepy, and no one wants to do that. And beyond creepy, actually, technology sometimes offers data that is raising ethical questions, and we have to be very careful about that, and everybody has to. And technology is not enough. What we mean in there is that just waiting for technology to evolve and create better creative output is not enough, and it's not going to happen. So we have to lead that way with the creative ideas, and the creative has to push technology instead of waiting for technology to pull creative. Yeah, it's back to our mantra: closer collaboration. Client, creative agency, and media agency has to work closer and closer together to create better and better programmatic campaigns. We need to have the data and the media structures to be influenced by this creativity. The creative needs the input from the media potentials, and the client has to be there to sort of approve this process, and we all have to work together instead of keeping three different keeping ourselves separated as three different actors and holding back stuff. So as the traditional advertising model sets it up. Oh yeah, thank you, slide. Thank you.
What we do? Maybe a very quick summary, maybe. Just thinking about what we put forward. So, it's really just us sharing a little bit about ourselves and how we work and our experiences, as small and as humble as they are in terms of programmatic and how we're developing. Some key things, I think, that thing about collaboration, we can't say it enough. So try and collaborate with other people if you can on the brief. I think it's really, really important. And that concept of the wall, you don't have to have a wall, but just understand that idea of sharing ideas with other people is like, if you can create that kind of environment to work with other people, I think it's a really, really good thing. And it feels very powerful to us. Iterate, don't be afraid to work at speed. It's not 24 hours to turn around everything, but just have that concept. You need to be careful on backtracking. No, but have that concept of like fast change, fast trying things, because it's a really good way, I think, to work in this area, because it's fast changing anyway. And I think it's an interesting concept. Rather than taking a week, 2 weeks to come up with something, it's I think a much more rejuvenating way to kind of think creatively. So that's really important. Then I would say prototype if you can, wherever your skills are, take them a little further, take someone else's skills if you can get them. But I would encourage you to do that as much as is humanly possible. And then on the brief, I would say embrace media. Don't be afraid by the concept, but this idea of how, where is super important to development creative work. as it ceased to be for some reason with traditional media. It's critically important to the work we do this stuff. And then with target audiences, think deeply and richly about audiences. Don't do all of them, but just think about the depth of that thing, because there is creative gold in those things. And then I think that's pretty much it, really. So if we're hanging around a little bit if you want to chat. If you have questions right now, feel free to ask them. But first I'll say thank you. And thank you to Robbo, to Sana, to Gabor for presenting so beautifully.
Yeah, I wanted to say thank you to Google and 72andSunny for having us today. You already applauded them. They're here for questions if you want to ask something. As far as the reviews go for next week, you can apply tomorrow at 11 in the morning. Be quick, we have 15 spots. We'll try to fit everyone in who wants to. So thanks again, guys, for having us.
Any immediate questions, anyone, or do you want to ask?
If you want to ask them personally, go up to them. Kleine mededeling nog. Kleine mededeling voor alle JoHo's. Als je nog niet hebt opgeschreven voor de 24 uur spits, doe dat nu. Dat is automatisch op vakantie. En vrijdag is nog een vraag, moet je met Naomi van Google. Dan kun je ook nog even geven. Zie je?
Ja, zij zijn oorspronkelijk eigenlijk al die technische mensen. Die weten wie zijn die. Maar in de grote ja, nee, zeker. Alles een beetje uit een beetje